on paper, I look successful, a successful banker, as you would call it, bigger goals. But guess what? In the back end, pretty much living on caffeine, relationships on autopilot, pretty much being reactive, sort of like it's all about the dopamine and kind of stuff.
Hello and welcome to Real Men Feel, where we explore the evolving face of masculinity and help men lead lives of authenticity, purpose, and power. I'm your host, Andy Grant, and today I'm joined by a man who knows what it takes to win, not just in business, but in life. Richie Enana is an award-winning author, a former banker, and current transformation coach who helps high achievers unlock new levels of growth, fitness, and personal mastery. From navigating major life transitions to cultivating daily discipline, Ritchie is all about building the habits and mindset that fuels true success. Whether you're on the verge of burnout or craving a deeper sense of purpose, you're going to find value in this one. Ritchie shares the two motivations of change, the blind spots he sees in successful men, and explores the body and bank connection. Let's do it. Hello, Ritchie, and welcome to Real Men Feel.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
So I know you've gone from being a successful banker to a transformation coach. So what first got you interested in banking, and then what triggered the shift?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think with banking, I think that was easy. I think it was the money. Yeah, I'm a trade CPA, so I think money, was an easy motivation at that moment in time. Being a young kid and not really sure exactly what you want to do, money is always a good motivation. But I think change happens two ways with the shift from banking into transformation. What I found they say change happened two ways. It could be through inspiration or desperation. For me, that shift was more around desperation. So by that, I'm looking myself in the mirror, I don't like what I see. And when I'm talking about not liking what I see, I'm not talking about the aesthetics. Yes, that too, because I have put on quite a few pounds over the months and I think over years, I think with the neglect, I think with busy with the work I was actually doing. But I did not like the way I did show up when I looked in the mirror because I did not like the way I showed up for my family. I certainly did not like the way I showed up for my friends and loved ones. And I did not like the way I showed up for my employers. And to tell you the truth, Andy, I was actually scared and depressed at that moment in time because I got health conditions that run in my family. And at that rate that I was going, things were not looking good. So it was time for me to make a shift. And for me to do that, being desperate is going back to the drawing board, seeking help. But the help that I was actually getting, the solution that was out there was just not right for me. Being busy with my career in banking and everything going, I only had a very short window in the day. And with the PTs or personal trainers that I reached out to at that time, I needed to work around their time, which was just not right for me. So I had to work something out. So I looked up everything from sports nutrition, PT, metabolic conditioning, but I found that stuff so interesting. I went deep into that, ended up getting certified in all that stuff. And that's what came out, that solution, the same solution that has helped me being able to not only maintain myself and get healthier, but also help hundreds of other people along the way through that. It was never really meant for me to be a coach. It was my mess, which turned into pretty much into my message. And through that, people noticing how I was actually shifting and asking me for help to actually help them how to do that. So it was very, very organic in how it all sort of like turned out.
Yeah, so it sounds like your personal growth really mirrors what you now do with clients.
Absolutely. So everything pretty much I teach has been more about my pain points, some stuff I struggled with. Being a busy professional, so to speak, from my banking days and how I can actually maintain health and have the energy, what I lacked. And it's filling those gaps that now I can actually articulate that and actually teach that, but can actually relate to that. So it could be anything related to that for the most part. These are kind of be burnout, in a case of like mental health kind of struggles you kind of face as you go through these kind of phases. So I can actually relate to what professionals are actually going through and being able to sort of like bridge that gap, yeah, as you indicated. So pretty much my message turning into my mess turning into my message.
So, Richie, I wonder how challenging or easy was it for your identity shift from corporate banker to entrepreneur and coach?
To be honest, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It's something that I've invested quite a lot of money in that for me to make that shift. Having said that, because what I found is being in a career, being in a job, everything became so easy for me. I was good at what I did, say in banking, in the case leading transformation programs. But when I came into the coaching space, it was very, very different. And being an entrepreneur, right? I had to learn everything about marketing. I never had to do much marketing in my consulting or in the case of kind of work career. Whereas you come in being an entrepreneur, you have to learn all that kind of stuff because you can have the best product on the marketplace. If nobody knows about it, nobody's going to buy. So it's like learning all those new skills. And it takes persistence as well. In the case of like going into the marketplace and being able to articulate your message as well. What problem are you actually solving? How can people actually relate to the problem you're solving so you can actually bridge that gap? So it wasn't easy, but I think what keeps you going is if you are clear on the purpose, then that grind, when that promise is actually very clear as to what you're looking to achieve, that grind, I think is easy. You can just keep on going.
When you first reached out, you have this niche that I had not heard of phrased this way before. But what is the body and bank connection?
All right, that's quite interesting. I think it's based on my book, actually, Body and Bank Connection. I think goes back to the struggle I had because I'll tell you a story how it all came about. I was talking to my fellow bankers. I was giving a talk. And I think one of the questions I raised is, what are your thoughts when we talk about fitness? And for the most part, the answers I normally get, and I did get then, was like six pack, At times you might get an odd answer like confidence and stuff like that, which is quite interesting, right? And I go like, oh, Richie, I do understand the benefits of exercise and fitness, but I just don't have the time. I need to put food on the table, right? Which was quite interesting. I was like, that is very, very interesting because it's actually counterintuitive, right? Me having been in that environment, because guess what? Studies have shown that when you exercise, you're 20% more productive, right? Studies have actually shown when you exercise, when you're in that environment, because I was speaking to bankers, my fellow bankers at that moment in time, you are in that very stressed environment. It's very stressful. So when you're stressed, guess what? The cortisol levels are elevated. And what do you need to counter that? You need things like serotonin, dopamine to counter that. And guess what? When you exercise, those are sort of like the benefits you get in the case of like the happy hormones as they're referred to. We can talk about the cognitive function. When you are in that demanding job, you need to be cognitively sharp. And what's so interesting is there's a study on BDNF. BDNF drives neurogenesis, which is the reproduction of brain cells. And what was found is that when you exercise, BDNF can be enhanced as much as threefold, 3 times. So I was speaking to my banker friends who was like, now with all these facts I just laid down, there's more to it, but just these 3 facts. Are you still saying that exercise and fitness is an option or a necessity? He goes, well, good to think about it, Richie. Now, I think it is a necessity. But so that was pretty much the genesis of my book in getting to articulate that message. The body and bank connection, yes, body and bank connection could be in a literal sense as how you can level up your bank account, right? Because guess what? We get paid for the value it brings to the marketplace. And as I talked about how you can be more productive when you exercise, guess what? That is likely going to drive your productivity, then that will drive your bank account. So it could be in a literal sense, but it could also be a metaphor. Whatever bank account you're looking to fill, be it your energy bank account, your productivity bank account, it starts with what? Our bodies. And that is pretty much what that is. Yeah, that's how it came about. So yeah, that's my book, Body and Bank Connection.
What are some common misconceptions in the high achieving men that you might work with? Misconceptions about personal development or growth?
Yeah, I think there could be plenty of in the case of misconception. I think growth, there is this misconception that in the case of like growth, maybe it's almost like a one-off, but I think it's supposed to be a constant. I feel like in my case, I'm growing on a daily basis. I call it playing back the tapes on a daily. What is it that I could do better today? Looking at today, what can I invest into tomorrow? Right? Look at the key pieces that I learned from today that are positive that I can invest into tomorrow. What are the things that I can actually sort of like eliminate? So yeah, so I think with growth, it's not a one-off. We have to keep on growing. The moment you stop growing is the moment you start dying. So I think that is, for me, I think that is maybe, I would say maybe one of them.
What are some of the common blind spots for someone that has all the outward signs of success in their life?
I think I can tell from my own experience with that because yeah, from I can on paper I look successful, a successful banker as you would call it, bigger goals. But guess what? In the back end, pretty much living on caffeine, relationships on autopilot, things like that, pretty much being reactive, sort of like it's all about the dopamine and kind of stuff. So it is very, very important, I think, in the case of having that identity shift and having that alignment. How is it that that's the reason I talk a lot about the operator behind, say, the business or behind whatever it is that we might see from the outside, which could be a facade, right? How is it that we can align the underlying operator? Because then everything else sort of like then aligns with everything else. Everything else can just be like levers. So I think it's all about how is it that we show up, and how we show up it's all about, I think for me, I look at it more about those all three areas, right? In the case of our health, if we're not really healthy and we don't feel right in our body, in our energy, because what? Energy drives execution. We can talk about having systems that drive scale, right? So in the case of like business, in the case of my look at it maybe from the wealth perspective, but also relationship. Relationships pretty much through everything, right? So it's all about how is it we aligned in all those kind of three areas. And for me, I think that is success, that we can relate to the people that actually lift us up. It's not so much about being in the room. Even when we leave the room, what is it that lingers after we leave that room? In the case of relationships, in the case of health and our energy levels, how is it that we'll wake up, raring to go? We're not crashing at 2 p.m., right? Do we have systems in place that actually drive scale, that we just not static, we're hitting that plateau? So I think those are kind of key areas, I think, for me that drive, that can have that full spectrum success, be it in business and in life.
Richard, when we first spoke, you talked about the banking world being a very machismo, tough guy place, which surprised me as a non-banker. That was not my stereotypical view of accountants. So I wonder, how has your view and definition of masculinity changed throughout your various careers?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point because I think I was going through burnout. I faced it big time. And I think these are kind of things we don't talk about too much. And I think as men as well, and things like even mental health, we don't talk enough about it. We are meant to just tough it out and grit and just keep on going, right? But to what expense? So yeah, for my banking world, in my case, my experience was that you're just meant in the case to show up. Yes, in the case of long hours, that comes with the territory, but it's also just about being that machismo, as you mentioned, in the case of toughing it out. If you show your emotions, you are supposed to be maybe weak or anything of that, or perceived as such, which is, I think, a sad situation. But I think things are still changing a little bit right now. So about that education, and that's the reason I think in my case, I've been driving that messaging quite a bit, that in the case of burnout is not a badge of honor, right? We can be just as effective and push things and scale without burning out, without sacrifice. And that's been my mission, because I did drive putting in place systems, driving billions in the back end. But you find the operators driving those systems themselves, they're not really operating at scale. So that has been my mission, and that was been because I was part of that world. So yes, it's very prevalent, and it's about again just being again that awareness as well. Because when you are in that culture, you don't because that's all you know, that's what you see. So it becomes ingrained and becomes the normal, but doesn't have to be that.
Beyond burnout and mental health, is there anything else you're seeing men struggle with today that they're keeping to themselves?
Yeah, I think it's the openness. I think men, I think it's something that we're supposed to be more about just tough it out. It's just maybe not just in the banking world, but for the most part, I think with men, we're supposed to tough it out. We're not supposed to open up when we're struggling, but then we end up just bottling up. And the moment we just have that outlet, we just sort of like almost like burst because we've just been bottling up for 2 months for too long. So how is it that we can be able to have create open spaces that we can actually articulate and communicate? So we appreciate your show, Andy, because this is kind of stuff that men don't really talk about openly. I'm struggling, I'm facing this, right? You admitting that, or me admitting that I have a problem or I'm struggling with this does not show weakness. I think if anything, it shows strength. Being able to, yeah, being able to be open about it. And only till you admit that I'm struggling or had a problem will you be able to get that help because you cannot help somebody that doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah, and men are, well, I'll speak for
Yeah,
myself. I've always been great at pretending I don't need anybody's help when that's the thing I need the most. And yeah, I have to get over my own freaking bullshit of and maybe that perhaps it is that ingrained distortion of masculinity that says I've got to figure it out myself, I've got to toughen up. But yeah, often the bravest thing we can ever do is ask for help.
absolutely. I can totally relate because I've been in that boat myself. And I think that's the reason I think I'm trying to create as much as possible. Like Operator's Edge is part of that as well in the case of trying to create that open space where people can actually communicate. You can open, this is a safe space, right? No judgment. How is it that we can create more spaces like this? Like what are you creating here, Andy? Talking about things like this. Because then when we open up, men go like, oh, actually, I'm also having going through that, but I thought I was the only one. And if I open up, I'll be seen as weak. No, it's not weak.
Yeah, that's why being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to share whatever you're going through, it not only helps you, it helps everybody else because it gives other people that hear that permission to go, oh, I don't have to just keep this to myself. Like that guy just spilled his guts and the world didn't end. That's amazing. That's not what I thought would happen.
Totally. And it's just a release as well. We just talked about bottling up, right? That release. And at times, speaking and talking about something, it just brings about that clarity as well.
Richie, how do you measure success in your work with clients? Is it just the scale or how much they bench press? Like how do you know someone is succeeding?
I think success for me, it's very personal. So each one of my clients have got their own goals. For me, I think the one of the best definitions I have for success is it's almost like a personal, progressive realization of one's own purpose. So it has to be progressive. It has to be worthy as well. Maybe I should add there, right? Personal, progressive realization of a worthy purpose, right? So, and that is again, it's very personal. So one of my clients come around, this is what I want to achieve, right? Success for them will look very, very different. The same it has been like even when I was coaching on the finance side of things as well. On personal finances, like I've got some clients who will say like, oh, Richie, this is my financial independence number I want. The other one would go like, this is my personal finance number I want. If I can actually have this money coming in on autopilot without me lifting a finger, I'm financially independent. So it's very unique to each and every one of us. So to your question, success is measured by how is it I can bridge that gap that a client has come to me and they're telling me this is my purpose, this is my goal, this is where I want to hit. and I help them bridge that gap. Because I've always shown, because what do coaches do? I've always, because at times there's always this thing about, in the case of like, what do a coach do? A coach does is pretty much shorten the distance, shorten that time frame. I looked at it more like we're all given these keys in this world, right? We have this bunch of keys, but trying to find that right key that's going to open the door to those new horizons can be quite fidgety, might take a little bit of a while sometimes. What a coach does is point you to the right key so you can open that door and get there quicker. So you can actually go to those new horizons. So how is it that I can actually help them, point them to that right key and get there quick enough and achieve what it is that they're trying to achieve? That is success to me.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that metaphor. I have been, and I see lots of people that kind of just collect keys, and I have this giant keychain full of all these keys of all these classes and programs I've ever taken, and then I don't really know which one to use when I'm faced with a challenge. So that really resonates with me. Richie, is there a book that has truly changed your life?
Wow, yes, there's actually plenty, but if I can pick one, and this is an easy read, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. I've read that book quite a few times. It's a classic. It's over 100 years old, but it's just amazing in the case of thought process and how thought does drive our actions in a lot of ways. And this just goes back to a lot of things that we talk about, be it mental health and all that kind of stuff. It's our thoughts, right? How is it that we can direct those thoughts to the right purpose? Yeah, so yeah, As a Man Thinketh is one of my most favorite books, and I've read it so many times.
In my life, I've found the importance of rituals and solid habits to create my best life. What is one thing that you do every day, no matter what?
Wow. First, every day, no matter what, when I wake up, first thing is water. Just have at least a half a liter of water just to keep that my metabolism. That's kind of a habit that I do have, but for the most part, I would add on to that. That is the first thing maybe I would do, but then I'll do some maybe mobility stuff. It just sort of like gets me going. Mobility stuff just takes about 5 minutes, so I would just do some mobility stuff, then just go into the zone. Yeah, but if there's one thing that I do is, yeah, water just seems to just almost just kickstart, okay, game time right now before anything. I only have my coffee, I think, about 90 minutes after I awaken at that moment in time because my cortisol level is actually dipping. Yeah, but water first.
And I'm glad you mentioned
Yeah.
mobility because so many guys caught up in the gym culture. I don't see them ever working on mobility ever, and they just want to get bigger and bigger and stronger and not necessarily be able to move.
That is exactly the problem. And the thing, especially as we get older, right? Mobility is key. Like if you can tell at times somebody's age by the gait, right? So, and that's the reason why mobility is something that is not spoken of enough and taught enough. For me, that's just been a game changer, and it's just been a habit of mine that I do on a daily. I've got a mat. I go on there, maybe a foam roller, do some stretching. It doesn't take long. It's only 5 minutes, but it's a very, very good habit. And I'm ever so thankful for it because I just feel so much better. I can actually, yeah, I can run circles around 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. So,
Richie, what's one thing that you wish more men knew?
wow. I think it's, well, that's a good one. I would say I think that the only limitations I think we put is the limitation we put on ourselves. And I think with men we tend to I feel for the most part, I think that's a generic, but I think it's more about those limiting beliefs that we have because again, go back to the thoughts as well. Um, be it with the struggles that we're facing, that it is this too shall pass, right? Be it with what direction we want to take, that we're not stuck in, we don't have to be stuck in a dead end job that we do not enjoy and wait to retire. Then at a moment in time, we can actually enjoy life. Is that we can pretty much change the course of our lives and take whatever course we want. And it's all about making that decision and change that identity. And anybody can do that.
And I find, I wonder if people, can you grow so much that you don't have limiting beliefs? Like maybe the Dalai Lama doesn't have any limiting beliefs, but I'm not sure if anyone else might.
I think limiting beliefs is it's part of it, because I think if you don't sort of like at times have, be it imposter syndrome, whatever it is, that's part of the territory, right? It's about doing despite, because whenever new environment you're getting in, you will have feel like you're an imposter, and it's normal. We are all imposters to start off with anyway, in anything, right? Because we do not have confidence off the gate. For the most part, what people stops people, all those having those limiting beliefs, is expected to have the confidence off the gate. But confidence is rarely there. With confidence, it starts with what? Courage. And what with courage, you're just jumping in there. Feeling that imposter syndrome, having those doubts, and just jumping in there. Then guess what? Then you commit. Once you commit, then you got what? You start building up the capabilities. Only till you build up the capabilities do you get to have that confidence. Yeah, so those limiting beliefs are normal, but again, those are the kind of barriers as well that can actually stop us from going after our purpose of actually what it is and test our limits. Only till we jump in there. There's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, right? At times you just have to do that.
So, Richie, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and to find out all the things that you're offering?
I think the best way to reach me is LinkedIn. I'll respond to all the messages. I post pretty much almost on a daily on LinkedIn, and that's Richie Nkana. You can just search on LinkedIn, and you'll find me there.
Right, and we'll have links for Richie's contact info and such in the show notes for this episode. And Richie, do you see clients in person only, or do you see how some have a hybrid system, or how do you work with people?
It's a bit of a combination. For the most part, the fitness was all online, because I started doing this. I still have my banking consultancy business, and I'm just at the point of I still consult with banks right now. So my time can be quite limited. I can't really be in the gym to do that. So fitness was pretty much purely online, and it was designed as such because it did fit for busy professionals and busy people. So it works around them as opposed to working around a personal trainer, which was my pain, right? So that worked fine. But for the other programs, I do in-person talks as well. I do like talks. I've got corporate training programs. I've got CTG, which is Clarity to Growth programs, a 12-week program for corporate. That is in person, but we also have a virtual version of it. Then Operator's Edge, which is a mastermind for the most part online, but we also have in person once in a while. But for the most part, yeah, it's online. That gives a flexibility, I think, with digital world we're in right now, and having clients all over the world as well. So it just makes it so much better that way.
Well, thanks, Richie, for making the time to talk to us today, and thanks for sharing your journey, your growth, and how you're using it to serve others. This is my favorite sort of man to meet. Somebody who's willing to be open about what he's gone through, and then how he's using it to help other people. So you've got it both. So thanks again, and thanks everyone for listening. That was Richie Enana, bringing powerful insights on discipline, growth, and redefining what it means to succeed as a man. If something in today's conversation sparked your interest or hit a little too close to home, take it as a sign. Maybe it's your time to upgrade your habits, shift your mindset, or simply ask yourself, am I winning in the ways that truly matter? Please reach out to me for a complimentary clarity call by visiting theandygrant.com/talk, and we'll explore what's going on in your life and what you can do to make it better. Until next time, be good to yourself.